Good morning, everyone. My name's Brian Doyle. I'm CEO for Family Services, and I simply wanted to welcome everybody. It's a terrific crowd, so many faces of friends and colleagues out here, all of whom work so closely with us in so many different realms. I'm not going to speak for long. I simply will be turning this over to Jen Herman, who is with Family Services and is the Sexual Assault Response Team Coordinator. And she's organized this press conference and this campaign, and I want to thank her for that. Jen, in her role, relatively new role since September, brings tremendous passion and intelligence to the work, which is very complex work. It's convening all parties within the community through law enforcement, the colleges, hospitals, and others to sit around the table and speak about how we, as a community, can bring a victim-centered approach to our work on behalf of those who have been sexually assaulted. So again, I want to thank Jen for her work, and I want to thank all of you for being here and for the work that you do and will be doing with us. I do want to take one moment. There is one thing quite related to this that we will be convening in October, on October 15th, and that's our annual Walk a Mile in Her Shoes. And we have with us the two co-chairs of the Walk a Mile in Her Shoes event, and that is Mike Davis and Michelle Barone. Mike? So please join us on October 15th for Walk a Mile in Her Shoes. And now I'll turn it over to Jen Herman for acknowledgments and remarks.
Good morning.
Morning.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Thank you all for being here. As Brian said, I'm Jen Herman. I'm the Sexual Assault Response Team Coordinator. I work with Family Services, but I work with many of you who are here today. Thank you again. The Sexual Assault Response Team is a multidisciplinary team of individuals working to provide a victim-centered, trauma-informed response to sexual violence in our community. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge many of the partners of the SART who are here today. That includes the Center for Victim Safety and Support, the Dutchess County District Attorney's Office, the City of Poughkeepsie Police Department, the Town of Poughkeepsie Police Department, the Dutchess County Sheriff's Office, Vassar Brothers Medical Center, Mid-Hudson Regional Hospital, Northern Dutchess Hospital, the Department of Behavioral and Community Health, the Department of Community and Family Services, Dutchess County Community College, Vassar College, Marist College, almost done, the Culinary Institute of America, Bard College, Relapse Intervention for Sex Crimes, and the Child Advocacy Center. The SART is supported through funding from the Department of Criminal Justice Services, as well as the Dutchess County Department of Community and Family Services. We also have the continued support, and I do want to thank the people who are here today, including Senator Serena, Dutchess County Executive Marcus Molinaro, the City of Poughkeepsie Mayor Rob Rollison. We also have District Attorney Bill Grady, and we have County Legislator Angela Fleisland and Sandy Washburn. In addition, we have a representative from Congressman Maloney's office as well, so thank you. Thank you again for being here. Every one of us is a part of the response to sexual violence, which again is why we're all here today. A friend or a family member is typically the first person a victim confides in after an assault, and each person's reaction is the first step toward healing and justice. Knowing how to respond is critical. A negative response, such as doubting the victim, can worsen the trauma, silence victims, and foster an environment where sexual assault offenders face zero accountability for their actions. Whether a friend or family member, or a hospital nurse, a law enforcement officer, or an advocate, our response can make all the difference. Research shows that sexual abusers offend an average of 6 times, which means believing a victim has the power to prevent 5 other victims. Start by Believing will lead the way towards stopping this cycle by informing the public, fostering a positive community and public service response, uniting stakeholders and supporters, and improving personal reactions. The goal is to change outcomes for victims, one positive response at a time. As part of our campaign, we will be launching a PSA video created in partnership with Spark Media Project and the youth in their organization. We'll have a billboard rotating Dutchess County, thanks to Highway Displays, a beautiful banner donated by Prime Print Shop. We've got bookmarks, posters, they're all up here today, other promotional materials, and many other things that we'll be distributing throughout the community to really raise awareness about sexual violence and about the resources that are available in our community. We also have an online pledge that we'll be asking you to take today. And in doing that pledge, we're going to be able to see who are we reaching and who are we not reaching, and again, continue to improve the response that we have here in Dutchess County. We'll be hosting community forums and events, again, to put sexual violence at the forefront. But today is not just about words, it's also about actions. And our partners, and many of who will be speaking today, have made an additional commitment to not just start by believing, but to take action, to be implementing trainings on trauma-informed response within their organizations and their agencies to ensure that we have a victim-centered response to sexual violence. This morning, as you can see, many people are here to support victims, to support us, to support this pledge. And I want to really stand in solidarity with sexual assault victims as we take this pledge in Dutchess County. So I'd like to first welcome up Senator Serena, who grew up in Dutchess County and of course has been an advocate for victims and has supported a 10-point agenda for women's rights. So please join me in welcoming Senator Serena.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Jen, and thank you, Brian. There's simply no way to understate just how important this campaign is. Sexual violence is one of the single most traumatizing events a person can face in their lifetime. Being sexually assaulted not only to be met with doubt and skepticism, not only adds insult to injury, it can often lead to further trauma and effects can be devastating. It is time to change the dialogue that surrounds sexual violence, and that absolutely starts by believing. When a victim reports an act of sexual violence, a sort of domino effect begins instantly. If a victim is met with skepticism, it's as if that first domino is falling onto itself. It seems like it's a little thing we're asking people to do, right? Start by believing. But I think too often we're unaware of our own biases, no matter how well-intentioned we may be. We're here today to raise awareness for that fact and to ensure that everyone understands what a big difference this small step can make in the life of a victim. When we start by believing, it sends the dominoes falling in the right direction, one right after the other, towards justice and towards healing. With partners from every level of government here today, community leaders, law enforcement, we're off to a great start. I thank Family Services for hosting this event here today and for all of the work that you bring to these issues to the forefront. And I'd also like to recognize our law enforcement. It is recognizing Law Enforcement Week. So thank you very much for your service and helping us. Thank you.
Now I'd like to welcome up an advocate, of course, for victims' rights, for equality, for human rights, and advocate from before the beginning of the sexual assault response team. You obviously know who I'm talking about. Dutchess County Executive Marcus Molinaro.
Although one of these days someone's going to have to explain to me how you can be for something before the beginning, but I appreciate that. First to all of you for coming together this morning. Our thanks as a community to the SART, to Family Services, and all of us as a community that really have to, in our own lives, be very cognizant, and I liked what the Senator had to say about our own biases, be very cognizant of our own biases, and the ability for each and every one of us individually to make a profound impact in the life of someone who has been sexually assaulted. To start by believing them and not have in our own selves a degree of skepticism. This victim-centered training, this victim-centered outreach is all part of our county's effort in partnership with all of you to lead, to ensure that no individual should have to be victimized by someone they love, by someone they know, by someone they don't know. That in every aspect of our community, the rights of the individual ought to be upheld. I've often wondered why we call this system the criminal justice system, when in actuality what we're attempting to do through this campaign and our broader efforts is create a system of victim justice, that the individuals who have been victimized deserve to have our compassion, our support, our understanding, and a system that helps them to ensure justice is delivered. So what Dutchess County is doing in partnership with all of you, I acknowledge that we are a cog or a part of this process or this effort. None of us is doing this alone. But what we're attempting to do as a community is to ensure that every individual can live a life that is safe and free of assault and violence. But should we have someone who is victimized, that their rights are upheld. And I would offer to you that what we often do in our government, and I'm grateful that legislators Flesland and Washburn are here, because the county legislature has been a strong supporter of our efforts to respond to sexual assault, domestic violence, child abuse. And I'd like to acknowledge for his leadership, both when he served in the county legislature, but now as mayor, Rob Rollison has been a tremendous advocate. But what we're attempting to do as a community is say community-wide, let us start by believing the individual who has had their rights violated. But what I'd like to end with is the understanding that each of us individually, we can accomplish this perhaps collectively, but each of us individually has the ability to make a profound impact when confronted by a friend, a family member, or someone in our social circle who has been victimized. So we individually have to start by believing them, not being skeptical, and saying to them that we individually want to provide you help. And the resources and the campaign and the efforts that we have put together in this community will continue to grow. And you as individuals, we as individuals, have to ensure that we help the victim find their way to ensure justice is delivered, but to restoring their own lives. And that begins by individually starting by believing them. Thanks for the work that you do, and we look forward to this great and important effort. God bless.
Thank you. Now I'd like to welcome up, again, another longtime advocate for victims' rights since his time with the police department, an advocate for the SART as a county legislator, and of course, continued efforts as today's City of Poughkeepsie Mayor, Rob Rollison.
Thanks, Jen. As many of you may have remembered, but I'm going to remind us all this morning, it was a pretty spirited mayoral campaign last year. And one of the things that I said every day, and also every piece of literature that I put out, and there was a lot of it, and I apologize for that if you got a lot of it, was that to believe in Poughkeepsie and to believe in the community. And that really resonated with a lot of folks, and it obviously resonated with me because I came up with that slogan. And this community, and I want to recognize someone who I believe in, Lorraine Johnson from the 3rd Ward is here. Thank you, Lorraine.
Thank you.
She's our council person, who's right around the corner here. Is that is a powerful word. Believe, believing, throwing the community into it. And I know that this community believes in itself, but there are people that need that extra thought of believing someone when something happens to somebody. In my time in the police department, the time in the legislature, and working with family services, knowing that, many victims don't come forward, they don't get help, they don't get healed. Probably being a crime victim could be the loneliest place in the world. And for some, it continues always to be lonely. But we're really blessed that we have organizations that are, developing ways to help victims heal. And it really is that simple. It starts by believing. And as the mayor of this great city, I am really lucky to say and be happy in saying it that Family Services is right here in the city of Poughkeepsie, so our residents who live here can come here and start the healing process. We're blessed with law enforcement that really cares. I saw the shift early on in my career in the 80s where the victim-centered approach became the norm. It wasn't always that way. And it's because of organizations like Family Services and the DART program, and now the new SART program, that really is what police officers think about sometimes even before they're trying to get the bad guy, they're worried about the victim. And that's important because victims sometimes stand alone. So I'll leave you with this, and I took this from the card, Jen, and this is really, I think, the way that we need to always think about crime victims, and especially victims of sexual assault, which is the most horrific thing that can happen to someone. You stand with the victims, stand with us, but you have to start by believing. Thank you very much.
Dutchess County Community College is obviously a really important thing for us to have in our community. 1/3 of high school students who graduate and go to college will attend Dutchess Community College. Family Services has had a long-time partnership with Dutchess Community College. This year, continuing to partner with the Sexual Violence Prevention Program to implement the Mentors in Violence Prevention Program. As well, 6 of us from the SART team were able to go to a 3-day conference for End Violence Against Women International. It was in DC back in March, and 6 partners went, and one of those partners was from Dutchess Community College, Marsha Butland, who's here today. She's the Director of Student Conduct. And so in order to recognize this partnership and to honor the work that we've been doing, I'd like to welcome up the President of Dutchess Community College, Dr. Eddington.
Good morning. When I was told that I was going to follow both Marcus and Rob to the podium this morning, they wanted to keep it to a half an hour. I figured there wasn't much left to say. But they really surprised me. This is the shortest I've ever heard them speak. Very powerfully, but short. So as you heard earlier about all the different partners who are engaged in this work, you heard all of the local post-secondary education institutions are part of this, which is wonderful. You know, combined, Dutchess Community College educates over 9,000 students a year. And when you think of all the other institutions who are in the local area, you know, it's tens of thousands of young people and not so young people who are involved in post-secondary education that we have an opportunity to influence. So we have been really ramping up our programs to prevent sexual assault. And that has really been the emphasis, I think, for us at Dutchess Community College and the other institutions, is how do we help people to understand what yes and no means and what different choices can lead to. With that being said, at the point at which there is an assault and when someone is victimized, the kind of program that Start by Believing brings forward is extremely critical. We have to have an entire continuum of services related to sexual assault. Part of my administration has been about community partnerships. You know, I'm a firm believer that we accomplish so much more. Rob, could you get the traffic to stop? Not yet. Okay, the bus goes. We get so much more accomplished when we work together. There's an African proverb that goes, when spiders unite, they can tie up a lion. And so I'm just telling you that Dutchess Community College is proud to be part of these spiders and this spider webs, and really look forward to strong partnerships with all of you. Thank you.
Lastly, I'd like to welcome up from the District Attorney's Office, who has continued to be dedicated to holding offenders accountable as well as supporting victim justice, District Attorney Bill Grady.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to first personally thank Brian Doyle, Family Services, and Jen Herman for hosting this event, because it's so very, very important that we bring as much public exposure to this very serious issue of sexual assault that we can. We as prosecutors all too often see the serious ramifications of sexual assault, especially when it's a consequence of an intimate partner relationship or family violence. And of course, these consequences, as we all know, are compounded seriously when victims are children. Therefore, we must all, as a community, and especially the criminal justice system, commit ourselves to doing everything possible to ensure that victims are not further traumatized by the very people that they turn to for help. For example, and it's been discussed previously, if a victim discloses a sexual assault to a family member or friend, these individuals must avoid becoming judgmental and help the victim and ensure that the victim is connected with the appropriate agency. Law enforcement, in interviewing the victim, must be continuously aware of the sensitive nature of the complaint and always ask questions in such a way as to not only gain a full understanding of the facts and circumstances, but also do so in a manner not to further traumatize the victim. As a prosecutor, in seeking to hold the offender accountable for his conduct, my office and I are committed to doing so in a manner that treats the victim with dignity and respect, and at the same time do all we can to ensure that the victim is not further traumatized by the system itself. An example of what we've done so far to help minimize the traumatic effect of disclosing and testifying about a sexual assault was the purchase of a service dog. A service dog who is specially trained to deal with issues involving trauma associated with horrific events such as sexual assault. His name is Bosch. He's laying down here besides me. He may look quiet and reserved, but believe it or not, with regard to anyone who does own a dog, very difficult to get a dog to sit quietly by your side for up to 2-3 hours at a time, especially with regard to what the dog is expected to do during that time. But Bosch has received over 1,800 hours of training in this regard, and he is a great asset to our office. Bosch, when necessary, you hear all that, Bosch? When necessary, Bosch accompanies victims into court and actually lays next to them, like he's doing now, only closer, during their testimony to provide the comfort and security some victims need to overcome the emotional trauma associated with testifying and recounting deeply personal and horrific events. Bosch has not only done this in the courtroom setting, but in countless interviews, and has been directly responsible for a number of child victims disclosing sexual assaults where they had not done so before. Bosch has also proven invaluable in providing adult victims, such as not only victims of sexual assault, but domestic violence as well, providing these victims with the emotional support that they need to adequately discuss the events surrounding their cases. And furthermore, and it certainly goes without saying, that education and training are the keys to all of us understanding the unique challenges that these cases present, so that we'll be able to not only hold the offender accountable, but effectively guide the victim through the justice process without that person being further traumatized. In that regard, I have joined with Chief Ron Spiro from the town of Poughkeepsie Police Department to host a 2-day training session this September for law enforcement and prosecutors on the subject of trauma-informed sexual assault investigations. The presenter will be retired Chief Tom Tremblay, a 30-year veteran who is a nationally recognized expert, teacher, and speaker in this field. His 2-day course will cover how to recognize and understand victim trauma and utilize effective procedures and interview skills to enhance responses, investigations, and prosecutions, so that we can, in the future, more effectively integrate trauma-informed investigative and prosecutorial practices. So again, not only am I proud to thank Brian and his group But I'd like to personally thank every one of you, many of whom we work with on a daily basis, for coming here today to join everyone else in giving recognition to this very important issue. We're being neededly to bring public awareness to this extremely important issue so that we can all start by believing. Thank you very much.
Today we ask you to take the pledge for our friends, our family, our loved ones, for our community. Go online and sign your name. Take pictures of your organizations and post on social media. Use our hashtags. If you don't know about hashtags, we'll show you. But help us spread the word. We want to get this out. We want to let people know. We want to let people know what you stand for, what your agency stands for, and what our community stands for. And as Rob said, because he took my tagline, stand with us, stand with victims, and start by believing. Thank you very much. Please come up. Please take part in the pledge. Grab some of the materials. And thank you again for being here.
Want to invite everybody?